Video. Hello, welcome to Meet the Podcasters here on Facebook Live. I'm Diane Ray, co-founder of the MindBodySpirit.fm podcast network, and we've been jumping on Facebook here over the past couple of weeks to introduce all of you to our wonderful podcasters. And we've got some amazing people on the platform and new people joining I shouldn't say every day. I wish every day. New people joining all the time. So we've been gathering some incredible talent on mindbodyspirit.fm. So I invite you to go over to the website and check that out. And today I'm excited to introduce one of our newer podcasters, Sara Wiseman. And Sara is a spiritual psychic, and she's a longtime podcaster, broadcaster. We were so excited to bring her onto the platform. She's already done, I think, over 700 episodes of shows over the past few years. So I'm so happy to welcome you to the Facebook Live and chat and introduce you to our listeners and hopefully bring some more people to check out your podcast.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Diane. I am really happy to have found you guys as my podcasting home. I look at all the other folks who are podcasting from there, and it is a fantastic, really interesting group. And I would say the wealth of experience and knowledge there is pretty exciting.
We like to say it's kind of a buffet table for people to select from wherever they are on their journey, on their spiritual path or inquiry. We've got mediums, psychics, spiritual teachers, health and wellness. So we kind of like to cover a bunch of different bases and just offer up the information. So, you're so prolific and you've been teaching for a long time, over 700 episodes, like I mentioned. So tell me when, podcasting became a thing, what got you interested in doing a podcast?
Thank you. Well, I think I might have been a bit of an early adopter, and I tend to be a little bit that way with technology anyway, but even as a kid, I would have these like leftover little tape recorders from various adults in my family, or I had a little spy tape recorder that was like a little mini, kind of thing. And I would just always just be like talking. And so I think I had an affinity for like this way that sound comes in and we can just kind of relax and listen, which is, I think, one of the really cool things about radio and podcasting is we can relax and let it sink in. We don't have to be focused on something else. So I think I just got in. I was interested early, and then I think I started podcasting pretty early too. I would say that I started in maybe the mid 2000s, or so. That was fairly early. I had a call-in psychic show where people would call in with their questions, and I would just do live readings on the air. And I did that a really long time. It was a lot of fun.
That's so fun. And I love that you mentioned how podcasting is kind of a personal medium, because as an old radio person, like I always loved the theater of the mind aspect of radio and how seemed like more a personal medium. People are listening on their headphones, you're talking right to them.
Yeah.
So it can seem very intimate, I guess, more so than, just watching TV or something like that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think and also you can be doing other things. So you're kind of in this very interesting state of relaxation. I don't know. It's nice.
Yeah. You can walk the dog, clean the house, change cat litter. It's just what I do sometimes with my headphones on, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So as people are scrolling through, Apple or Spotify, and they're looking for a podcast, and your show description, it says, you're kind of reaching out, casting the net for intuitives, empaths, sensitive people, or seekers. And I think maybe you're looking for people that could be, maybe I'm the black sheep of the family, or, I'm the one that's had these experiences and I don't feel that I can talk with people and share what I believe, which may not be the same as my family members or friends or things like that. So are those the people that you're looking for when you're kind of casting the net?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is welcome, because I think, like, people come to different paths for different reasons, but absolutely this feeling of the introvert or the sensitive or the person who's been having like psychic experiences or spiritual experiences, or just going through a lot in their life, and they're looking for like a template of how do I make sense of this, or how do I get out of this. I am particularly interested in working with people with gifts, and they tend to be all over the world. Like, it's interesting who shows up, because I'm trying to create a community of sensitives. So we are able to support each other with some of our experiences. That said, I'm kind of finding that from when I started, the sensitivity level and the intuitive nature of people has expanded so enormously in, the past, 12, 14, whatever years that is. It's like we've just taken off in terms of our understanding level. So I just want to be a resource for people that can't quite figure out what's going on.
That's interesting. Do you think that there's more people coming in, or I guess there's kind of a theory of there's younger generations being born that are maybe more aware. I think sometimes they're called indigo children or crystal children. But that being said, for the younger generation, do you think there's people that are just kind of coming to an awareness of their gifts?
Yeah, I would say it's both. Absolutely. I notice with, say, millennial or Gen Z or Gen Alpha, those people are coming in sort of awake from the beginning. But I'm noticing with people more in, 40s and up, it's almost like something is just sort of turning on. And one of the reasons I think this is happening is because of podcasts, videos, social media, all of the ways we're starting to connect with each other. And so we're sort of getting that little spark. Whereas before, maybe we'd go to like the dusty library and there'd be like the one book about intuition that was in the back. And now it's sparking everywhere. And that's allowing more and more people to kind of go, yeah, that's actually been my experience too. I didn't know. Oh, okay, this is a thing. I can learn this. I can learn how to understand it.
Right. It's definitely more accepted now. And I think people are a little bit more comfortable talking about it. I remember during my years at Hay House, we would have these big events, these I Can Do It events. And one of the great mediums that I worked with, John Holland, he would come out and the first thing he would say is, okay, who's the oddball in their family? Who's the one that had experiences that didn't want to share? And of course, everybody would raise their hand, and now I think we are becoming more inquisitive and more aware of having those gifts, which I think is great. And I think that we're six sensories, becoming more aware that we do have that sixth sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And not only is it's no longer considered strange, but it's actually it's almost like we could only see the five senses before, and suddenly we all can see many more senses. And it's not just that it's weird, only a few people can do it, but like this is a normal and natural part of our human evolution. Like, we're just expanding our skill set as humans, which is very exciting.
Something that we should all be more aware of and be working to enhance that and be more in touch with it, for sure. So you say that you're a spiritual psychic, and I know people might not want to label themselves or, pigeonhole themselves, but what does that mean to you when you're working with people and they ask you, Sarah, what's a spiritual psychic?
Yeah. Well, it's definitely not religion. There's no dogma. There's no particular belief system that's required. I think for me, the word spiritual psychic came out because my entry point into all of this was having contact with guides and other beings, which started in the early 2000s. And if I'm honest, it actually started in childhood. I just didn't really know, didn't have words for that then. But and it was always about this idea that we're much more than our body, mind, personality, like the container or the structure or our opinions or our perspective. We have this other part that you might call your soul or your consciousness or your awareness. And this is the piece that we don't want to do psychic tricks just because we can. We want to have a bigger use for them, like a more expanded way of being in the world. And so that term sort of fit. At this point now, I'm actually thinking it's really about the study of communicating through communicating through our awareness, whether we're communicating to guides or animals or plants, or we're communicating with each other without language and without illiteracy. Like how do we communicate just with our, not our brains, but with our awareness? And that's what I've sort of been working on lately.
So tell me if this is true. I've heard that all mediums are psychic, but not all psychics are mediums. Would you consider that you have mediumship abilities?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely a medium. My feeling is once you kind of cross over, I don't know, cross beyond turning back in terms of your abilities, you can do it all. You can do energy healing, shamanic journey, mediumship, past lives. Like it's all open to you because it's all from the same menu that you can pick. However, the different dimensions that we're in, like mediumship has a slightly different dimension than, say, working with the guides. And so some people that'll be more comfortable or natural or feel more at home to them. And for me, mediumship feels slightly sort of fatiguing. And so it's not my preferred place. Whereas for other people, that's their sweet spot, you know? So it's just kind of like figuring out which part of the universe you like to focus in on.
Or maybe where your skill set is stronger.
Yeah.
Do you remember your first mediumship experience?
Well, I think my first mediumship as a child, so one that stands out clearly from early on is I as a child, I lived in Norway, and we lived, for whatever reason, right next to a cemetery. And we would just go there almost as if it was a park, like it was kind of a thing to walk in the cemetery. And I just remember just knowing all the people were there, like it was clear as a bell. It wasn't even like they were departed. And it was my favorite place to go and, chat with all the all the people there.
So you would go and just commune with the energies there.
Yeah.
And it wasn't scary to you or anything like that as a child.
And, it's funny because they were probably all Norwegian, which I didn't really speak very good. So it must have been a telepathy because there wasn't Norwegian coming to me from these Norwegian departed. It was just, communication, telepathy.
Right.
Yeah.
So you hear it in your head.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That must have been a cool experience.
Yeah.
So if people are out there and they're interested in exploring these topics and this path, and they stumble on your podcast, I mean, you said it's kind of open for everybody. I mean, what are some of the things that you're focusing on lately in some of the episodes now? Like, what are you really into teaching?
Yeah. Right now, so sometimes I will put in sort of spicy or intriguing titles to the podcast, and those will always get, kind of a lot of attention. Like I'll put in narcissist or toxic or some kind of word, but in reality, what I'm attempting to do with the podcast is make it this sort of almost like a little mini university where you can just go in, almost like you pick at random, whichever podcast, and I am teaching and discussing these aspects of spiritual intuition so people can learn. And so I don't really think like one podcast is the more interesting. I think they're all super fascinating. A lot of the times in the podcast, I will do a teaching from a channeled writing that I've received from some of the guides. And sometimes in the podcast, I will take people through an exercise so they're going into their own space and kind of getting an answer to, some kind of question they had for their life.
And do you work with people to teach them maybe meditation techniques or certain exercises, things that they can use on their own in
Yeah,
their
well,
own
I think
time?
definitely when we do these ways of, like I call them blind readings, I'll sometimes put those in the podcast. Those are really useful. But I think for this, there's so much to learn and there's so much almost like misinformation out there. I think I want to just create this groundwork, like listen, learn, come back, learn some more, practice. It's just like a resting spot where people can go and immerse themselves in some of these ideas and teachings.
And you mentioned misinformation. What do you think is the biggest misconception or, thing that people totally get wrong?
Okay, that's such a good question, and I'm scared to answer, but no, I do know the answer. The answer is people think it's instantaneous. And it is true, these big spiritual awakening moments can be instantaneous and really big. But the bigger piece is having a practice, not necessarily a meditation practice, not necessarily a journaling practice. You don't have to use tools or props. You just need to connect in with your guides or whoever you are wanting to connect with. And you just kind of need to do it daily. And that's why I have so many podcasts. Like if you're having trouble, go listen to a podcast and it'll take you into that state of connection. But it is a practice. That's the only way you're going to
Right.
get
I
ahead.
think that's such a good point because I think people tend to believe that people like you and other teachers are these magical, mystical beings that automatically have these fabulous powers, that I could never be as, uh,
Yeah,
have the
yeah, yeah.
expertise of that person, but you're just a human, like all of us. And I think that's great that you're telling people, look with some practice. And if it's something that you're really passionate about, you can enhance what is a natural given ability that we
Yeah,
have.
yeah. And it doesn't even take like 4 hours a day. You can spend 15 minutes a day just kind of considering this, keeping it in your mind, or other people's what they teach too. It doesn't have to be what I teach. But yeah, you just continually return back to it, and then you're sort of surprised. Time goes by, and you're like, I'm a different person. I'm complete. My life has totally changed. How did that happen? Oh, it was this little step by step over time.
Right. For the better, I hope. I mean, you don't just lose weight, if we could miraculously in one day,
Right.
everybody would be happy, but that's not the case. I mean, would you agree the other misconception? I think that people may be afraid to explore some of these topics, even if they're interested, because they think it's quote evil or goes against whatever their, spiritual
Yeah.
tradition that
We
they grew
def
up in or
yeah.
they're comfortable with. I think it can enhance it.
Yeah, definitely. People come from a lot of different religious or cultural backgrounds where, my belief is that religions or different cultures created this idea only the certain few people can do this because that allowed control. Whereas now we know like everyone can do this, or basically anyone who wants to can do it. And that means that we all have control together, which is a whole different way of living our lives on the planet.
That's so true. I
Yeah.
remember the first time I did a meditation with a group of people, and I was just starting to learn meditation, and I thought, this is weird just to sit with people, in that space. But it's so powerful that after that, I would always look for groups to meditate with because the energy is so much better,
Yeah, yeah.
when you get like-minded people together.
It's, like sometimes people have heard like you'll do that om sound in a circle and one person, and it's like every voice comes in, and when your own voice is faltering, someone else's, not the om sound, but the energy of the other person is kind of lifting you up. And when they falter, your energy is lifting them up. And it's like we all are holding the container together, which makes it easier.
Right. No, that
Yeah.
makes so much sense. You're
Yeah.
such an amazing teacher, and you have so much to share with all of our listeners out there, hopefully new listeners to the podcast. I mean, as we're getting into like a new year and a lot of people are facing some challenging times and fear and challenging feelings. I mean, what would you say to people, I guess, looking forward to give us a little bit of hope as we're going into a new year?
Yeah. Oh, thank you. Well, even though the future looks a little bleak when if you're listening to your news feeds, when you're paying attention to the bigger energetic streams, the astrological streams, just from your own meditations and your own knowing, we're really entering this magnificent period of humanity and equality and all of these things that we've been hoping for generations. So that's like letting go of what's coming through your phone or wherever you get your stuff from, and really focusing on the true energy behind what that's really going on. And it's a much more hopeful than what we're being told.
Right. There is hope. That's good. We can
Yeah.
end on a hopeful note.
Yeah.
And you've got some new podcasts coming out and so much that people can learn. So I hope that if anybody happens to come across this video and they want to check out a great podcast, Spiritual Psychic with Sara Wiseman, on all the podcast apps and on mindbodyspirit.fm. And I'm so glad you could join me today and chat. I love talking about this kind of stuff. So I could talk about this all day long, but I'm sure
Oh,
you've got stuff to do. So
yeah, no, it's great. I guess maybe the only last little thing. So I do a monthly forecast, and for every year, so we're coming to this year's end, I'll do a big annual forecast, which a lot of people really enjoy. So that's going to be there pretty soon. So,
awesome. Well,
yeah.
definitely check it out, Spiritual Psychic with Sara Wiseman. And thank you so much for joining me. Head over to mindbodyspirit.fm and check out all of our other amazing podcasters that we have and make sure you subscribe and follow. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my
Bye,
pleasure,
everybody.
Diane. Thank you.